The comment was inappropriate.
The comments were very unhelpful. I think they're a serious precedent. And I wonder what senior politicians will say of future commissions like the Housing Commission or similar appointed commissions of working groups.
A mother of 5 with incurable cancer has described the financial impact of her diagnosis on her family. The Irish Cancer Society is calling on the government to tackle costs faced by patients who are being treated for cancer. It says the person's annual income can take a hit of €18,000. They also face increased monthly costs of €750. Linda Butler is living with cancer and says she has to make difficult financial decisions.
So upsetting, and I'm still dealing with the devastation of having to retire from a job that I loved and I worked so hard to get, and now I have to say no to my children about everything because we just can't afford it, because Mum is sick and to pay for A, B, C and D, and people don't see that bigger picture. It's not just about me, it's about all the people that I love around me, and you feel the guilt because everyone's life has changed.
That's it for now. We'll have more in an hour.
News Talk weather.
Thanks to Ryanair. Flying you to over 200 destinations is our business. What you do there is yours.
Continuing dry in most areas with a good deal of cloud. Isolated showers will occur over the northern half of the country. Temperatures 14 to 17 degrees. And now you're up to date on News Talk.
The Newsround on Off the Ball.
With Gillette, for an effortless finish to your day. New Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
This is News Talk.
Welcome along to Thursday evening's Off the Ball. We've got a great show for you tonight. Legends pretty much across the board. Laura Davies, already in the World Golf Hall of Fame while still an active player. 7-time European Order of Merit winner, 4-time major winner, is going to be talking to us about Shane Lowry's victory at Wentworth and also the Women's Irish Open returning to the schedule next week. We'll be talking to Serena Williams coach Renee Stubbs, who was in camp with Serena for the last 2 weeks of her career at the US Open, about the retirement of Roger Federer next week. John Giles will be alongside me for the football show, and we'll also be revealing the newest co-host of the Koi Gig Pod as well. All that to look forward to over the next 3 hours. With me for the news round now this evening, delighted to say we've got Richie McCormack. How are you, Rich?
In well.
And Mick is here with me as well. How are you, Mick?
I will. How are you?
Just a bit of news to cover across the show here. I'm not sure exactly where we start. Maybe Federer, given we expected this to happen. The knee injury has hampered him for pretty much the last 3 years, but particularly the last year since Wimbledon of 2021. But still, you reflect on a great of sport.
That's it. It's one of those news... Yeah, it's one of those breaking news pieces that isn't at all surprising. You were just waiting for when so that you could then celebrate the person. You know, we've had one of them in the last week or so, haven't we? Serena Williams. No, yeah, so look, Roger Federer is... I'm just really happy that we'll get to read lovely pieces and listen to lovely radio interviews and just kind of bask in the beauty of Roger Federer for the next week or so. And actually doing it the week before an event that he's then going to bow out in means we will get 2 full weeks of this, which is wonderful, because I don't think there's any sports person that I kind of would like to read more about than himself, you know.
It's remarkably rare that somebody gets to the top of the mountain in their sport, who has to step over so many other people to get there, but seems to be so universally loved.
Yeah. Super nice guy by all accounts, but at the same time, we don't really know any of these people, don't we, not Richie? But just as a tennis player though, it's just poetry in motion. And that is it for me. We can have all the discussions about who won more, who was technically better, the tenacity of Nadal, the whatever of Djokovic. I don't even know what it is that makes Djokovic great. But look, let's face it, he is. But nobody will ever, I don't think, win the hearts and minds in the way Federer did, just because of the beauty of the way he played the game, you know. And I don't think tennis was ever a nicer or better sport to watch than when Roger Federer was on his game, and that actually included well past his prime. You know, I don't know about you guys, but for me, some of the most emotionally draining sports watching experiences I've ever had was watching Federer try to go to the well 1 or 2 last times, and getting to that 1-1 in Wimbledon finals or in Grand Slam finals, and then ultimately just not having enough and Djokovic beating him 3-1. I think that happened 3 or 4 times, and it was always just this, can he do it this time? You know, it was just one of those guys that I honestly am just so happy that I got to witness his career all the way through from start to finish.
Yeah, like I think, Richie, even back to Australia 2018, as Mick says, like, you know, everyone has a shelf life and the body starts to break down, and that's been particularly the case since 2019. But like that kind of one great hurrah, it's 15 years from his first Grand Slam title, and in a way he kind of wills himself over the line to win again to get to 20 Grand Slams. Like, I'm delighted he got to the round number of 20. He's not going to retire with more Grand Slams now than Novak Djokovic or Rafa Nadal, but there was something very symbolic about the idea of getting to 20.
Yeah, getting there was huge. I think it was probably huge for him. I think it's sad in a way that he doesn't get to say goodbye on a court, but then he's also saved the ignominy, is probably too strong a word, but he saved the ignominy of going out on a loss. This way he's kind of going out on his own shield, and there's a beauty, like Mick touched on the word beauty in there. Like, I don't think very many men's tennis players of our generation you can ascribe the word beauty to in terms of how they played the game, because like, you could just watch a still frame or look at still frames of his backhand for days on end and literally never get bored, because there's something graceful and beautiful about the way he played that shot in particular. He's still one of the best tennis players of all time, and they still hold up that 2008 final with Rafa Nadal at Wimbledon as the best sporting contest I will probably ever see, because you can have great finals, you can have great teams in finals, you can have great players in finals, and usually that will be, you know, one-sided. To be like, you look at like 1970 World Cup final, like Brazil were playing against a very good Italian side, but people just remember Brazil walking through it. But to have two people who might have a claim to being best ever playing at the same time at the peak of their powers against one another and going the distance and making that final better purely because they were each so good is something very, very special. And Roger Federer he'll be an ambassador for the game, whether he's involved in it or not, because he'll be an example to everybody that went before, because he started off as this kind of typical bratty Eurotrash teenager, and we came through an era of serve failures and big servers, and he kind of swept all that clean and made something really gorgeous out of the game of tennis, and was very successful with it. And like, you're not gonna he's gonna be forever associated with Wimbledon. Winning 8 titles there is absolutely incredible, and I think he deserves every single one of the plaudits that probably will come his way over the next days, weeks and months.
That's the thing, Mick. It takes great dance partners, and in a way, him and Nadal will always be linked. And that's why you see Nadal's statement there, which I think is very heartfelt. He sent to my dear friend. I was hoping I would never have to find this day that I had to write this statement, but I feel I have to because of everything that we've shared on the court together. And in a way, they enhance each other's reputation.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, it's Messi Ronaldo, really, isn't it? But like, while Messi Ronaldo, I think, found some sort of way to coexist, I don't know if they ever liked each other, where you always got the impression that Nadal and Federer were genuine friends, you know, as well as super competitive rivals, you know. I think, to win 8 in that time in Wimbledon in particular, the 5 in a row, obviously Borg did it as well, and when you think of both of them, the eras that they were in, you know, it's like it could happen another time, like with less competition, I suppose, and it would still be an incredible achievement. I think maybe Sampras, for example, like, probably not the greatest competition in that era, you know, but what Federer was going up against at all times, for them all to reach those numbers, given the fact that they were all playing each other, was incredible. I remember him beating Henman before he was anybody, you know, and I'm sure tennis people understood, but if you're the guy watching, you know, Tim Henman's Odyssey in Wimbledon every year and not much else, you didn't know who Roger Federer was, and immediately just thinking, oh, this is a guy. Whereas I have to say now, even like Alcaraz and all these guys, now that he's won it, great, I'll keep an eye, but I find it very hard to spot because there's so many guys coming through, you do find it hard to spot who's going to be the next big thing. With Federer, you sort of knew straight away, and I think a lot of that, Richie, was maybe not to do with any accuracy on my part, but going back to your point about the style, you just knew that whether, like, maybe he would never win another match, but there was something very memorable about the way he played the game, you know.
I think getting to one of the hardest things for him, I don't want to speak wrongly on his behalf, but I think one of the hardest things for him was probably getting to the start line, like getting to that level whereby you could win a Grand Slam, never mind 20, where you could win 1 Wimbledon, never mind 8. I think shedding that kind of notion of being temperamental, of letting referees and other players and all that get into your head, and just being a complete mill pond of stillness and mental calm when everything else around you was completely tumultuous. That's a gift. That is a real gift, and that is a gift that probably takes work. And I'd imagine he probably did work pretty hard on that.
I don't remember that
just
like
turned him
change of
into a
personality.
player.
Sorry to Richard.
Oh, it was there.
Yeah.
It was there. Yeah.
No,
yeah.
but I'm actually saying it's
the-
interesting because it's so, he's obviously
Yeah.
so like ingrained in our mind, that stillness and calmness that is like, I don't even really remember what came before, you know?
Yeah, his first couple of years as a pro, and definitely when he was in the juniors, he was that kind of snotty, temperamental, argumentative player, and that went. And to get rid of that, to shed that, and to become what he became is an achievement in itself.
Rugby Championship today, Mick. Very unusual, firstly, to have a game on a Thursday morning. It wasn't unwelcome to watch this.
Caught me unawares, I have to say, unfortunately.
Yeah, I thought the dates were wrong originally when we were getting ready for the Rugby Championship to come back after the break, and I was thinking, surely it must be Friday, if not it was Thursday. There are basically games in the Australian League this weekend, so the game is on a Thursday for the Bledisloe Cup. All Blacks now top of the championship, but that tells nothing of the story of the game. Geordie Barrett scores a late try, 39-37, which is a thriller in and of itself. Looked like the Aussies had done enough to win the game. They did what many teams do. They get a penalty in front of their own posts about 7 or 8 yards out from their own line, and basically it's kill the clock, get it into the red, and then we'll kick it out of play. But that is not how the story transpired.
No. So, waits to take the penalty. More off the clock. Waits to take the penalty. Australian players start to get a little bit angsty behind them. Doesn't take the penalty. Referee calls it. Rightly. Scrum. New Zealand. But it wasn't even just that they got the scrum that was overturned. They went and got the try there and won the game. You know, it was like, it was such a confluence of events after Australia's incredible comeback anyway, and like such a good game. You know what I mean? So it was like, it was just brilliant. And I have to say, I feel not one bit sorry for Australia in this regard. Now, I think most of the world disagrees with me on this. It's kind of, if referees aren't going to be calling this all the time, then you can't have random cracking of the whip. But this is such a big moment. This is going to, you know, maybe the referee shouldn't have just done it randomly at the end of a game, having never, you know, no referee has almost ever done it before. But this is like a worldwide story now. This is going to bring attention on this issue. And I guarantee they will go the way of, this is now the norm, rather than saying, oh, referee made a terrible decision there, cost Australia the game, because he was well within his rights to do it.
Yeah, I know it's the correct decision. The problem is it's not consistently applied. So there's one of two ways it goes. Either the way that you think it might, which is that referees will now be encouraged, that this has happened in one of the biggest games in world rugby, and the foot was put down, and in this case Australia were punished for trying to kill the ball to go red into the clock, or it will be seen as a one-off and it'll never happen again.
Yeah. I don't know. What was the game that happened? Was there was this, I don't even know what sport it was, but something like this happened really recently, didn't it? Was it in hurling? It was in the hurling championship. Somebody took too long to take a free, and the referee gave it the other way.
Overturns, yeah.
Yeah, do you remember? And there was a big controversy at the time. And like, again, it was Galway. It was Galway against Wexford in the game that ended up being a draw, wasn't it?
And people had the stopwatches out.
And people were like, this is, it's happened many other times in the game. And that's fair. There is a natural human instinct that we have to not shy away from, that at the end of the game, time is a lot more important than it is in the rest of the game. And it's all letter of the law people and people with stopwatches on Twitter will prove you wrong all of the time. But time wasting at the end of the game, not taking that penalty to keep the ball in play,
well,
I think is an issue, and I don't think there's anything wrong with a referee saying, hold on a second, I'm not letting you kill the game here.
Yeah, it's really significant in this one, Richie, where
all they had to do was win their own line out, and they didn't back themselves to do it.
That's
the
thing.
Yeah.
Like, the 41 seconds at one point of the game can be very different to 41 seconds elsewhere. And in Australia's case, Richie, they were being cynical in watching the clock go down to ensure there wasn't going to be another play. So technically the referee should call this all the time.
He should, but again, you're into consistency of application, and that's, like, whatever sport it is, that's always going to be an issue with officiating, because like there's been so many penalty calls or not penalty calls in the Champions League this week that in ordinary circumstances, in inverted commas, should be penalties, but weren't. And similarly, this is a case where the ball could have gone easily dead, and it just happened to be the application. The referee had said, nope, I'm going to play this as it lies and continue on here. And that's a typical All Black New Zealand trait, whereby they will inch out literally every bit of wiggle room for a game to be won. and that was the little bit of wiggle room that they needed to win that one this morning.
Yeah, thanks Mick as well for reminding me about the amount of people that DM'd me around the hurling pod at the time of that Galway Wexford game at Wexford Park, where people had timed like 2 or 3 frees earlier in the game and were saying it's not unreasonable at all. He's only taken 26 seconds I think to address the ball. But there was a free 10 minutes before that where they took 50 seconds.
Isn't it funny that sport is so universal that I had a picture in my head of this and I could not figure out what it was. I didn't know if it was
I don't remember
GA,
which
rugby,
one. Went,
football, whatever. I just and then it suddenly came to me. But no, that was again, look, I think that time wasting in general in sport is something that has been largely ignored by authorities, and it ruins the end of sporting occasions. And whatever about doing it in play legally, there is literally nothing. It would end in a minute. The last 10 minutes of a football game that's 1-0 is pointless. Think of the Euros, the England-Germany game in the Euros final, in the women's Euros. Like, England did it really well. A lot of it was in play, but it was pointless because it was like the end of the spectacle. And there's so much. It would just be, if they just bothered, it would be instantaneously over. And the same thing here. If this is always the case, then teams won't do what Australia did today.
Contrasting text coming in on 53106. Ray C in Mayo. Lads, I've been watching tennis since the 1950s. I've seen most of the greats. Roger was the absolute best. And that argument could go on about the GOAT, and there can be so many different arguments around the top 3 particularly. And then Federer is an outstanding sportsman, but my God, this is not from Ray, this is from someone else. He is quite boring, is he not, Mick?
I don't know. What do you want? You want them doing dances or giving out to umpires and all? He was. What
you're trying to say is you want to combine the combustible nature of Nick Kyrgios with Federer's talent and winning, and that would make the perfect sport.
I don't necessarily. I don't know about you guys.
What do you think, Rich? Is Federer boring? Defend him here.
I don't know how anybody could have looked at the last 20 odd years of Roger Federer's career and called him boring, and called watching him boring, and called watching how he won matches and how he dug matches out boring.
That text.
I was literally just talking 2 minutes ago about the emotional trauma of watching him try to do it. I don't think boring would be the word I would associate.
Probably in the greatest tennis match of all time, that 08 Wimbledon final that went for many hours and into 5 sets. The Newsround is brought to you by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Are we starting with Federer on the Newsround, Rich?
Yeah, we'll start with Rog. He's announced his retirement from competitive tennis. The 41-year-old says next week's Laver Cup in London will be his final outing as an ATP pro. During that incredible career, he won 20 Grand Slams, a record 8 Wimbledon singles titles, and announcing the news on social media, Federer says an injury-plagued 3 years have forced his hand.
The last 24 years on tour have been an incredible adventure. While it sometimes feels like it went by in 24 hours, it has also been so deep and magical that it seems as if I've already lived a full lifetime. I've had the immense fortune to play in front of you in over 40 different countries. I have laughed and cried, felt joy and pain, and most of all, I have felt incredibly alive.
Roger Federer said about it, the Laver Cup. I think in many ways it is appropriate that he'll be going back to London to finish out his career. Renee Stubbs is going to join us at around about 7:30. Serena Williams, former coach, to reflect on Roger Federer's career and also the end of Serena Williams' professional career too. The Roscommon ban, going back to that minor game from a couple of weeks ago, Richie, it's going to be effectively a 2-year sentence that's handed out here.
Yeah, pretty much. The Roscommon Competitions Control Committee has recommended a 96-week ban for the individual involved in an incident which required a referee to be hospitalised. The incident occurred during an under-17 meeting of St Aidan's and St Dominic's in Ballyforan. The incident led to the referee strike in Roscommon and a Garda investigation.
Tonight, Manchester United, Shamrock Rovers among the early starters. What's happening?
Yeah, into the final 20 minutes in Belgium in Group F of the Conference League. Rovers 3-0 down away to Ghent now at the moment, while elsewhere in that group, a bit of a thriller going on in Sweden. It is currently Djurgårdens 2, Molde 1, and the Norwegian side are down to 10 men. Cristiano Ronaldo once again leading the line for Manchester United, and indeed he scored their second. They lead 2-0 away to Sheriff in Group E of the Europa League. He's penalty doubled the lead, which was given to them by Jadon Sancho earlier in that game. Elsewhere in that group, Real Sociedad and Omonia Nicosia are tied at 1 apiece. Back in the Conference League, West Ham and Hearts both action at 8 o'clock. They're away to Silkeborg and RFS respectively. Connor Coventry is on the bench for West Ham, as is Darren Randolph.
All right. The Republic of Ireland squad then, Richie, named by Stephen Kenny earlier. This was a dual naming day because Jim Crawford was naming the under-21 squad as well.
Yeah, busy day out in the Aviva, and it's now 2-2, by the way, between Yorgorden and Malta. Stephen Kenny says Robbie Brady has earned his recall to the Republic of Ireland squad. A string of fine performances for Preston this season have seen Brady return to the international fold for the first time in 18 months. Also returning is Cardiff's Callum O'Dowda and the fit-again Andrew Omabamdeli, but Liverpool goalkeeper Caoimhín Kelleher misses out through injury. Ireland are away to Scotland on the 24th of this month, with Armenia visiting Dublin 3 days later. Michael Obafemi is among those included, despite being omitted from the Swansea squad for their past 2 championship games. His manager Russell Martin explained the striker's reaction to a botched move to Burnley was behind his dropping. Kenny says the situation is not ideal.
Yeah, I've spoken to Michael, and like everything else, there's 2 sides or 3 sides to every story, and certainly Michael wants to play football. He wants to play football, wants to play for Swansea, so obviously he's been omitted from the last couple of squads after the deadline day bids and so forth. It's not ideal. We want our players coming in good form, so it's just one of those things. I'm sure he'll be back playing shortly, and we're delighted to have him in the squad, because I've got to see him. We've watched him a few times this season, and he's played well. He's been at the level that he finished off last season. Okay, maybe that's not been translated into the goals, but I seen him against Blackpool where he ran 60 yards. He was right in on goal, right to win the game, and just unselfishly laid it off to Oliver Incham to score to win the game, and then scored a great goal against Millwall. So he has done some good things, and his form has been good overall.
All right, Stephen Kenny speaking earlier today. We probably not greatly surprised here, Mick. We were kind of speculating about the squad last night. Robbie Brady back playing regular football. Callum O'Dowd is fit again, who's been a favourite of Stephen Kenny's. So from that point of view, no great surprise. Omabamdeli is back fit again. Maybe some of the players have missed out here. Will Keane, who was previously in squads, has dropped out. And other than that, I don't think there's any great surprise with the senior squad.
No, not at all, really. It's kind of, as we said last night, like, for all the lack of Premier League issues, and Obafemi there, obviously, that Kenny was talking about, like, the Irish players are in decent form, and it's probably one of the most informed squads he's picked up. He's been able to pick. Obviously Coleman and Duffy aren't getting football, as neither is Matt Doherty, but other than that, most people are playing every week. So there's a good bit to be positive about. I was also happy to hear, this Stephen Kenny very much backing his player there in a very reasonable and thought out way, not just a kind of a don't want to really talk about this or answer the question way. I think that was really good to hear.
Richie, Aaron Connolly, not in the senior squad. He's gone back to the 21s for this crucial couple of games in the qualifiers, a playoff to potentially go to a major championships.
Yeah, Aaron Connolly named in that Ireland squad, the under-21 one, for their European Championship playoff with Israel. Currently on loan with Venezia, Connolly's last under-21 cap came against Sweden 3 years ago. There's a first call-up for Lincoln defender Sean Rowan, while Brighton's 17-year-old striker Evan Ferguson is also included. And Crawford says Connolly had no qualms about dropping back down a level.
And Aaron Connolly, he's named in the squad?
Yeah, Aaron. Aaron's a different story. Aaron's played with the senior team, he's played with Brighton, scored with Brighton, and he's seen the highs. And also he'll admit himself that he's been in a dark place, where football became probably not his highest priority, which when you're a young professional footballer it has to be. But Aaron, I seen his interview there a number of weeks ago where he looked focused. He said he's in a great place. When I had a few chats with him with regards where he is physically, where he is mentally, he's in a far better place than he's ever been. So I'm looking forward to working with Aaron. I worked with him at under 18s. I worked with him when I was Stephen's assistant with the 21s, and I know what he'll bring to the squad. And this is a great opportunity for him to show people, whether it's Stephen or coaches at Brighton Football Club, that he's still around.
Interesting decision, Mick, to bring Connolly in, because Stephen Kenny has been pretty straight up about the fact he didn't think any of the eligible 21s who were in the senior squad were going to drop back. This would indicate to me that Aaron Connolly was not in the thinking for the senior squad at all, and this is now an opportunity for Jim Crawford.
I think that's fairly reasonable though, Will, isn't it? Like, I mean, I don't think there's any, we can't just have a kind of a close squad. I mean, people have to be able to drop in and come in, and Aaron Connolly's not showing anywhere close to the form that should be called up to an international senior squad at the moment. I would be interested to see though, has any like 8-cap full international, especially in Ireland, gone back to play under 21 before. We were kind of half hoping a couple of months ago that maybe a couple of players might get released. As you said, that was kind of a non-runner from the start, but this is definitely, if Aaron Connolly's in any kind of form at all, this is a massive boost for the under-21s, which is, and that's such a strong team as well. You look at players like Will Smallbone is, has to be very, very close to the senior squad at the moment. With
I think him and Conor
Coventry
will get senior caps in November.
Coventry possibly needs to play a little bit more first team football, but he is getting some at West Ham, so there's it is amazing to just throw Aaron Connolly into that. If he's anywhere close to his potential, he's probably too good for that level, which is only good for Ireland, obviously.
Yeah, sad news as well, Rich. The legendary former Welsh player turned broadcaster Eddie Butler has passed away. I'd strongly recommend. Owen went to Wales earlier this year ahead of the Six Nations and had a pretty lengthy sit-down chat with Eddie Butler, where they ended up talking about a fairly wide-ranging interview, and he spoke about Welsh independence, he spoke about rugby, he spoke about life after rugby. It's still available on the Off the Ball YouTube if you want to pick up the interview or any of our podcasts. If you go back to a little bit earlier this year, you'll find Eddie Butler. But I know you're a massive Eddie Butler fan, Richie.
Yeah, really sad news today. The legendary Welsh rugby figure passing away at the age of 65. He died in his sleep. He was on a charity hike in Peru. As a player, Butler captained his country 6 times. He toured with the Lions in New Zealand in 1983. And of course, in later life, Butler became known for his rugby commentaries with the BBC, with whom he also covered Olympic Games and lent his voice to several documentaries outside of sport. And as he explained in that interview with us earlier this year, he was a strong advocate for Welsh independence.
Yeah, nationalism is one of those words that it is very easy to toxify, because nationalists are Serbian militiamen who carry out massacres. Franco of Spain was a nationalist, and it's a bad word. I am merely a seeker of independence. And I think we should stress the independence rather than this nationalism implies a sense of superiority. And I genuinely do not feel that we have that in Wales. We don't want to be better than anybody. We don't feel better than anybody. We just want to be ourselves.
Yeah, really fantastic piece from February this year. Like, we're just saying myself and Mick here, Richie, there's a beautiful lyricism about his voice. Like, you can still hear the fact he'd be talking about someone coming over the top in a ruck, but at the same time he can talk beautifully about nationalism and Franco at the same time.
Yeah, he could have read a phone book and I could have listened to it, to be honest with you. Just an incredible voice. There was an authority to his voice without a crumb of condescension, which is an incredible thing to possess. And there's also like a deep sadness when someone like Eddie Butler passes away, because people who call sports for so long, and obviously his playing days were probably before a lot of our times. But for people who kind of call major sporting events and call them so well for a prolonged period of time, there's a constancy there that outlasts even a lot of the people that will be involved in those sporting events. And so to lose one of those voices, and at the age of just 65 as well, when in that interview too, he had spoken about what comes next, and he never kept any trinkets or anything to do with his career or any notes or anything like that, because you discard it, you move on to the next thing, because the next thing that comes along is going to be better. The next year is going to be better, and it's really difficult to comprehend that for him that's not going to be the case. But just an incredible loss. He gave so much to the sports that he loved, so much to sport in general, and God, he'd be missed across many fronts.
Oh, for sure. May he rest in peace. And Richie, just to finish up the news for this evening on the Newsround, tell us what's been happening at the Italian Open Golf.
Yeah, decent day for Rory Mcilroy. An opening round of 67 for him. He has a share of the clubhouse lead. The play has come to an end there with Matt Fitzpatrick on top of the leaderboard. The Englishman still had 3 holes left to play of his first round. He's 5 under par. Mcilroy, along with Gavin Green and Adri Arnaus, are on 4 under par. Scott Jemison, Eddie Pepperell and Antoine Rosner have also joined them on that mark. Jonathan Caldwell, next best of the Irish. He is 1 under par following around his 7th. Then you got Cormac Sharvin on 2 over, Paul Dunn on 3 over, and Niall Carney on 4 over par.
Richie, Mick, thanks a million. That is the news round. Time for the cash machine.
Your chance to win big. News Talk's cash machine.
Now the streak continues. Sandra McCall was our 12th winner in just 13 days today when she answered that call.